portions of 151 Leominster Shirley Road from the commercial district to office park and industrial district. So the entire lot is in the office park and industrial district. And portions of 181 Leominster Shirley Road from resident B district to office park industrial district. So the entire lot is in the office park and industrial district, as shown on a plan on file at the office of the town clerk, Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, or take any relative action thereto.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Selectman, your recommendation.
Till we see the presentation.
Thank you. Finance.
We deferred for the presentation.
Say it again. Waiting for the presentation. Thank you. Now, let me point out to everyone that what Mr. Powell read is the entirety of what you're voting on. However, in the warrant that was mailed to you, somewhere language was sort of dropped in the middle of it. Language that kind of repeated itself to the rest of the article, so it would have appeared that there were only three parcels. There are 4 parcels. Mr. Powell, what he read is all 4. I made the decision when this came to my attention that because all of these plans are on file, that everybody was on notice as to what we were talking about. If you were interested in one, you were interested in all 4. So I made the decision that even though it's wrong in what was mailed to you, what was read is correct, and so it's within the scope. Mr. Powell, you may speak to your article, if you wish.
If I may, Planning Board recommends approval, 3-1.
Did I not ask?
3-0.
Thank you much, Mr. Allison. Mr. Powell, tell us about your article.
Basically, if you look at the slide up above, that property, the pinkish color and the gray color, is all of ours, and the 2 yellow pieces are residential. What we're asking is if we can straighten that, basically that zoning line out to encompass those 2 yellow pieces and change them to office park industrial. Our abutters are the North Leominster Rod and Gun Club, the railroad tracks, there's a machine shop, and P.J. Keating's.
Questions for Mr. Powell? Oh, here comes somebody. You should sit closer.
I'm sorry, John Whalen, 526 West Townsend Road. Just a quick question, and that is, he's addressed the abutters, which is great. However, 1 and 2, the lots on the corner, I know there is a house or 2 on that corner. Are they in favor of this as well, and are they here to speak to that?
I don't think they are.
Okay. And are they in favor of this?
I'm assuming if they're not here, they are.
Have you approached them?
Well, one of them's a customer of ours for Evergreen Landscaping, and the other one, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. We had a hearing on it, too. Yeah, plus there was a hearing on it, and nobody showed up.
Okay. So there's been a hearing, and now there's been a town meeting, and nobody's expressed.
Just one question.
Yeah.
How much land are we talking about? I don't think it was described. It just say portions of. How much land is all that?
There's 1 acre. The smaller yellow piece is 1 acre, and the bigger yellow piece is 7.
Nobody else at the microphone? I'll declare we're ready to vote. I believe this must be 2/3. Is that correct? It is. All those in favor of this article, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Whoa, opposed? Passes unanimously, which is more than 2/3. Okay, number 39 is a citizen's petition about an easement on School Street. Mr. Lasko, how you doing? Get close to the microphone, Mr. Lasko, and somebody read this. 39.
I feel as though I've been on a flight to India. I move that the town vote to grant the Lunenburg Historical Society an easement in a certain tract of land described as follows. Beginning at the southeasterly corner of property of the Lunenburg Historical Society on the westerly side of School Street, south 72 degrees, 9 minutes, 30 seconds east, approximately 79.5 feet to the westerly side of School Street at land to be retained by the inhabitants of Lunenburg. Thence north 10 degrees, 55 minutes east, approximately 145 feet to the point of beginning, consisting of approximately 1/4 acre with exact angles and distances to be confirmed by the survey.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Selectmen,
We're going to hold our vote until after the presentation.
remind me to ask for your vote. I didn't do that on the last article. Thankfully, it was unanimous. Finance,
We're deferred for the presentation.
deferred. Remind me to ask. Mr. Lesko, tell us about your article.
Mr. Moderator,
Go ahead.
I noted that there is an error in the motion. I would like to see that it is corrected by offering an amendment.
Okay, tell me what the error is, Mr.
Striking
Lesko.
out the words, the point of beginning. Near the end, you see the point of beginning, and inserting in their place land of the Lunenburg Historical Society. That term in the beginning is quite incorrect because it leads the line to nowhere. And
the line to nowhere. Been on it.
No one has picked up on it, and so I wanted to offer that as an amendment at this time.
Okay. So that's in print here now. Do you have that corrected?
No,
Ms.
that's what
Lemieux?
Mr. Lasko pointed that out. He would be amending.
I know he wants to
motion.
amend it, and there's a second. Do you have it?
No.
Could you put it? Excellent. Just so everybody has it right in front of them. Okay, so that motion was made and seconded. I think everybody can vote on that. All those in favor of his motion, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Good. Your motion carried. Now about your article.
Hold on.
Your motion to change it was accepted. Okay? So now you've got it as you wanted it with town council's advice so that it comes back to the point of beginning. Correct? Good. Now tell us about your easement.
At town meeting in 1965, the people voted to sell to the Lunenburg Historical Society approximately 1/2 an acre to erect a building to hold all of the treasures of the town of Lunenburg. Now, we've shared a portion of the parking lot of the old primary school all of that time. And we may now be in danger of losing that privilege in the event the school property is ever sold to a private entity. That stands to reason. We seek an easement for parking space granted by you. The checkered portion is the area that we're looking at. We have a driveway of 20 feet in width, plus property at the rear of the parking lot. And in front of our building, you can see there is very narrow space. Here's another view of that from the assessor's map, showing the area outlined in red that we are seeking an easement for. It's about 1/4 of an acre, but not all of it is usable because of the green island. Here's another view of the society building, and we see on the right-hand side, beginning at a sharp point at the right-hand corner, that's our driveway. And it leads toward the rear of the side of the building, and our property line cuts right across the front, giving us about an 8-foot wide strip, illustrated here by the arrow and the entrance to the society. Now, that's hardly room to park a car. So that's the reason for asking for this easement, because we really need the space. Here's an example when back in June one day we had 10 cars parked out there. So that 8-foot wide strip is hardly adequate for that. We've also granted the use of our meeting room to other organizations. And, of course, they all need parking as well. So that's our story today. We ask for an easement to protect that parking space for our use for the years to come. We really don't want a building built 8 feet away from our entrance. Thank you.
Stay right there, Mr. Lasko. There might be questions.
Can we
Okay, no
recommend
questions.
approval or just
Say it
approval?
again?
Can we recommend approval or
Yeah, I
just go
didn't know
through
if you had
that?
any questions first. Okay, no questions? Mr. Clark.
Oh, yeah, just some education. School Street, is that a public way and maintained by the town? Oh, okay, so you got plowing in the winter and all that good stuff, so for the society? Okay. And let's see. And it's the society itself, what's the basic, is it a nonprofit or?
You want to get all off into the weeds on everything else, Mr. Clark?
No, I'm just wondering what
just
we're
wondering.
dating the.
You know it's 7:20. Kind of late for wondering.
Oh, okay.
Okay? On the easement, Board of Selectmen and Finance, you need to caucus, unless you got another question.
I
Wait,
didn't
wait.
get an answer what the society is, but that's okay.
Thank you.
I recommend that the Board of Selectmen recommend approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
Sure. I would just like to say for anybody who's not familiar with the Historical Society that it is a good asset to the town. When I was doing research on my previous property, and Jim Larkin was the curator, the amount of attention and time they give anybody in their personal questions and their quest to learn about their space, I think it's an asset, and I definitely think we should make sure they have parking and access to their building. So, thank you.
My only concern was that at this town meeting today, we turned down, a plan for that whole piece of property. There's going to come a time when we're negotiating to do something with that piece of property. I think the Historical Society has used what's there to date. I think there's no reason why they can't continue to use that space. I just feel that encumbering it might limit the town's options when it comes time to reuse it for something else. And I certainly think it should be considered as we do planning, but I'm not sure we want to encumber that space at this point in time.
And Mr. Chair, if you will, for further discussion on our vote, we have a motion and a second. Is that where we're at?
Yeah, that was discussion, yes.
Sure. I just want to make sure I'm in line with where we're at. I think everything you just said supports the fact they need an easement because we don't want to make a future plan that harms something that's already there. What's already there is more important than what could or would be there, especially considering it's the Historical Society. So I think everything you said about the unknown future of that space lends itself to this easement being a priority.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, me.
Board of
We
Selectmen
recommend approval.
3-1. Finance, where are we at? You're home?
We recommend approval, but I did have a question in terms of okay, so say that the town makes a determination, the town still owns the land, the easement is attached to the land for the purpose of parking. If they did decide to demolish the primary building and build a park, does that limit the town's capacity to extend that? Just a point of clarification.
Okay. I think we're ready to vote. All those in favor of Mr. Lasko's citizen petition number 39 in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You have your easement, Mr. Lasko. Article 40, please. Another citizen's petition. This one is a zoning, 2/3. Who's going to move this article? You folks? Okay.
Hello, I'm Helen Obermeyer Simmons. I live at 323 Northfield Road, and we would like to request...
We have to move the article, so read the language first,
Well,
okay?
if you let me finish, we want to pass over this article.
Oh.
40 and 41, but we request that we make a public comment before we do.
Go ahead. And you're deferring your time to Mr. Massey, right? Excellent. Go ahead, Mr. Massey.
Thank you very much. Very good to see everybody. Part of the public comment
You got to say who you are and where you live.
Sure. Darren Massey, 300 Holman Street, Lunenburg, Massachusetts. Part of my public comment is a request if I could present 12 slides.
On an article we're going to pass over?
Correct, or I'll make the verbal public comment.
Can you just give us a summary of it, Mr. Massey? Because it's 7:30. My wife said I should be home at 6 o'clock.
You got it.
Give me the thumbnail sketch.
You got it. The thumbnail sketch is, I believe we're a community. I believe we're better than what I've seen and experienced from various people online. I believe everyone in this room could be friends. I believe we're a peaceful community, that we could even be better as a community. Recently I met with two neighbors, or at least one neighbor and one other member of the town, based on a request to meet. One of their requests was to pull these articles. We're doing that now. In addition, there was a request to set up a charrette. I welcome that process. I welcome us finding a peaceful solution to be in a better town as a community. The whole point of these articles are to have events that improve our mental health, our social health and welfare, as well as other interests that I believe we have in improving the economics and marketing of this town for everybody. So, at the request of the charrettes, I welcome that. I invite everybody there. I look forward to hearing the dates and time of that. I believe they may be in the library. In addition, I believe there might be some general invitations to people's houses where we may get to know each other a little bit more personally, and so that some of the material that's been passed around may be reviewed and adjusted, for it might not be accurate. So thank you. I appreciate the brief comment, and thankfully we might end this sooner.
I would have let you do the 12 slides, but I am exhausted. Okay, all those in favor of passing over Article 40, please signal by saying aye. Aye. All those in favor of passing over Article 41, please signal by saying aye. Aye. Great. One article left. Don't leave. I promised this citizen petitioner that there would be a quorum when he got down here. He's coming down right now. Article 42. This is the last article. 43 is going to be moved to be passed over.
And I assure you it'll be brief. My name is, for those who don't know me, my name is Hans Wunsch. I live at 418 New West Townsend Road. I'm here as a citizen, but I am a member of the zoning board and have been for almost 12 or 13 years. I move that the town vote to amend the town of Lunenburg zoning bylaw by changing the special permit granting authority in section 4.13 entitled Solar Energy Systems from the Planning Board to the Zoning Board of Appeals by specifically amending sections 250, 4.13D, 1B, 43D3, 413D3A, 413D3B, 413D7A, 413D8A, and 413D11, all as printed in the warrant for the May 4th, 2019 Lunenburg Annual Town Meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Selectmen. Remind me. Finance.
We deferred.
Thank you. Tell us about it, sir.
So it's my belief that it's not in the best interest of the town to have the planning board issuing special permits. Historically, the zoning board has the power to hear and decide special permits in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40A, subsection 9, the Zoning Act. More specifically, in our protective bylaw, the Town of Lunenburg, 258.3, the Board of Appeals, C-2B, in granting any special permit, the Board of Appeals shall assure that the proposed use, B, in that subsection, will not have a material adverse effect on the value of land and buildings in the neighborhood or on the amenities of the neighborhood. And the reason I'm before you tonight is an example of how this can be problematic. In the most recent approval of a 5.8 megawatt large-scale ground-mounted photovoltaic installation at 99 Northfield Road, map 37, parcel 13, that was before the planning board, I got up as an abutter, as a citizen, along with almost a dozen of residents like you and I, whose properties were going to be affected by, clear-cutting 24 acres of property. And I wasn't impressed with the way the planning board handled the situation. Basically, the zoning bylaws that you see in front of you, the four zoning bylaws in front of you, that's all in our bylaw, and that's what we interpret. That's what I look at when I'm looking at the zoning bylaw and an applicant comes before me. I wasn't quite sure that the planning board was looking at the same bylaw that I was looking at, because they disregarded these four instrumental sections of the bylaw when they approved the application. First of all, they allowed a statutory deadline to lapse so that it was basically conditioned. The developer got a conditional approval on the project. They also failed in their obligation to look out for residents and the abutters. In my aspect, I think the decision was arbitrary, it was capricious, erroneous, and a detriment to the residents of Lunenburg, and went against the bylaw. As a result, 5 of our residents who've lived there some 50 years are now going to have their property values affected by the fact that the planning board decided not to adhere to the bylaw and just disregarded it and went with the developer over the residents. Honestly, I think it was a detriment to the public good, and it nullified and derogated from the bylaw. And as it stands now, the planning board is really essentially the jury, the judge, and the executioner when it comes to solar bylaws. And this change will impose checks and balances and give the special permitting authority to the ZBA where it's best suited within the land use boards. And please note, under this change, we're not seeking to change the solar bylaw, but just change the granting permit authority. And if you look at the use table when it comes to the planning board or to the zoning board, there was 65 uses in the zoning bylaw, over 11 districts. And the ZBA basically oversees all of those, except for 6 that are issued by the planning board in the Whalum district, and the only 2 uses over those 11 districts is the marijuana and the solar bylaw. And quite honestly, I think the ZBA is best suited to interpret the bylaw and hold the applicant accountable, both as give them a fair hearing and also, stick to the bylaw and interpret the bylaw. And I think if anybody's come before the zoning board, we're fair. We want to help the applicant, but we also have to enforce the bylaw. And quite honestly, I wasn't quite sure that the planning board was looking at the same bylaw I was. And, there was 13 or 14 of us that got up and said, we just want you to move a certain section. And I'll be honest with you, I asked how many acres they were clear cutting. They were clear cutting 24 acres of forest land. And the issue was there were several houses on New West Townsend Road that they came right up to the property line, and instead of keeping the natural buffer, they let them cut the buffer down and plant trees, which to me just does not make common sense. I mean, the natural buffer was there. You have 24 acres. We were asking it as the abutters to move it back 100 feet. 100 feet. Keep the natural buffer, move it back another 100 feet, and no one would ever see anything, and the property values wouldn't have been devalued. And the planning board actually disregarded that, and they voted for it with no conditions whatsoever that appeased the residents and taxpayers of this town. And so that's the reason for my article, and I'd be happy to take any answers.
Excellent. That's why you're there. You have a question, sir?
I do. John Whalen, 526 West Townsend Road. It's not as much of a question as just a show of support. To actually hear a member of one of the boards want to take this on, want to take on this issue, and actually enforce the bylaws that we worked so hard to pass over about a 2-year period. I am thrilled to hear this, and I cannot put enough support behind the ZBA if they want to take this over. It does create a check and balance between the two, and the issue you just mentioned about buffers is one of those big issues. As we said, in the bylaw, there need to be 200 feet of buffer, and it should be leaving all of the existing vegetative buffer that's already there, and numerous companies have not done that, and the planning board has not said anything when they've done that. And they only go with 50 feet of buffer and then some small plantings behind that, or just a mowed field behind that. That 200-foot of buffer actually had a purpose. It was so you could not see it through the trees. And when you knock down most of those trees, even though you give us 200 feet, you can still see it through 50 feet of trees. So I'm thrilled to hear this, and thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allison.
Matthew Allison, Flat Hill. Excuse me, but I think we're thinking of the Settler Solar project?
Pardon me?
Settler Solar?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, the planning board voted that down 4-1, and then we got sued. And because the state laws suck, they won. And it got remanded to us, and then we pushed and pushed and pushed. We got you $50,000 from the developer to plant trees on your own private properties, because we initially defended all the abutters, we listened to all the comments, we looked at our crappy bylaw that doesn't really define buffer, and we did the best we could. And I'm really sorry you're disappointed. If ZBA would like to take this, I'd be more than happy personally to give it to them. Thank you.
Mr. Alonso.
Tom Alonso, 34 Lancaster Avenue. So I am in support of the article because I believe that having two boards look at it for various reasons is a good reason. I don't agree with the way it was presented. I think if you start, I mean, obviously the bylaws that the ZBA is saying they'll uphold were ones that the planning board had at their access to, and to have an accusatory reason why something should come back is not a good reason to change the bylaw. But having another board so one board isn't the jury, judge, and executioner, I think is a good thing. So for that reason alone, I would say I support the article.
Thank you. Mr. Cole?
Just to clarify that the planning board has voted 3-0 against this article. And also, as a member of the planning board, we can only vote on what's presented. So to make the representation that we supported a 100-foot buffer or a 150-foot buffer when a 200-foot buffer is stipulated in the bylaw is really inaccurate, because we can only vote on what's presented to us. We tried numerous times to get the applicant in that particular situation to consider larger buffers. But again, we can only vote on what is presented. Also, in terms of buffer, I think everybody needs to be a little bit careful, because if you have a parcel that's, say, 50 acres of hayfield with not a single tree on it, and you stipulate that the native buffer needs to be maintained, you are going to get no screening. In this particular situation, you got $50,000 worth of money to put screening on private property, which will be in the control of the property owner. So I don't see the compelling reason where the planning board did not represent the best interests of the community. I think we did a good job, and I think this is simply a power grab by a member of the ZBA that wants to exercise his position there to influence more control.
Thank you.
On the Lockwood 91 Main Street. So A few questions. You're part of the ZBA currently, sir?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And your interpretation is that the planning board did not do a good job.
All I'm saying is that as a resident, as I interpreted the bylaw, I wasn't quite sure that the planning board was looking at the same bylaw, zoning bylaw I was when it came to solar arrays.
Okay.
Because they had typical, and listen, it's not to offend anybody. Everybody's on boards. We make difficult decisions. I make them. They make them. This board makes them. The bottom line is, I think you have to have checks and balances. And I think when you look at, when you interpret the bylaw and they have the ability to make conditions and they don't, there's a certain outcome, and that's why I'm here today.
Okay. So is the ZBA an appointed position or is it a voted?
Pardon me?
Is the ZBA appointed or voted?
It's appointed.
Okay. So we have right now we have an elected body that has control over this. And your suggestion is let's put this into a appointed, give it to an appointed body. It sounds like, based on your own argument, it's not that, and again, this is your interpretation, it's not that this power doesn't belong with the planning board. It's that you think the current people who made that decision were not efficient or didn't do their good job. Hold on, I'm talking. And what you're suggesting is that we give it to you because you would have made better suggestions.
No, what I'm saying is that the zoning board interprets bylaws. That's what they do. And so every time that an applicant comes to us, we say, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't. And, every project that comes before the zoning board, and I'm speaking as a citizen, not as a, I'm just letting you know I'm a member of the zoning board.
Well,
we are a quasi-judicial branch of government that adjudicates applications before us. So all we do is we interpret the bylaw and say, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't. The planning board is not, they don't do that on a regular basis. The planning board does not adjudicate and say yes or no. In this particular instance, for some reason, and I don't know what the circumstances are or the history behind it, but they are basically the jury, the judge, and the executioner when it comes to the special permitting process. They are the granting permit authority across the, when it comes to photo arrays. All I'm asking is that I think the town should look at it and put it where it belongs, where the ZBA can say, that's what they do, is they interpret the bylaw and say, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't.
Yeah, but right now, it just almost feels like a conflict of interest that you're asking to be given to you so you can make the right decision. My other question is, did the ZBA vote to support your motion?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
Well, I thought you were in the ZBA.
Pardon me?
Aren't you in the ZBA?
Yeah, and you're asking, what are you asking me?
Did the ZBA take a vote on this article?
They did not.
They did not take a vote on the
No,
article?
they did not.
Okay.
Okay, so the ZBA doesn't have a position.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Proculo.
As a member of the ZBA, have you ever missed a timeline and resulted in a...
Pardon me?
Have you ever missed a timeline?
We have never missed a deadline.
Never missed a deadline resulting in a constructive grant?
No, and I can tell you that we've had several 40Bs in front of us, so when it comes to a 40B permit, the planning board is taken out of the picture and the zoning board becomes the de facto granting permit authority, and we have never missed a deadline.
Nice.
And I can say that we have made some decisions that a lot of people didn't like when it came to 40Bs, but at the end of the day, we interpreted the bylaw and we went with what we thought that the intent and the intent of the bylaw was.
Okay, so we're done. We're not going to be pointing fingers at different committees. Really not helpful. No, you're not at the microphone. How can I recognize you? Oh, well, you're a little slow, Menard. I know it's 20 minutes to meet. I've been here for 12 hours.
I still haven't grown. Karen Menard, 672 Page Street. I share the same concerns that the previous speaker had, or two previous speakers had. I just also wanted to point out, we really shouldn't be casting stones when we live in glass houses. There was an article that came up a few articles ago about the ZBA making a decision without another elected board knowing that didn't get passed. So I don't...
Yeah, but we're not going to get into pointing fingers at committees. That's a bad policy.
Exactly. So personally, I'm fine with the way the planning board handled it. I was involved with open space, so I'm very familiar with how a lot of this went down. So I'm My battery's dead, so this means it's over. I'm good with the way the planning board handled it, and I'd encourage everybody to leave it in their hands.
Okay, we're ready to vote on this article to change from planning to zoning. We're going to get there, you betcha. Are they ready to vote?
I vote that we do not recommend approval.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
Mrs.
Okay.
We recommend not approving it 3-1.
Not approving 3-1 selectmen. Finance.
Finance Committee finds no direct financial impact.
No direct, okay. All right, we got one article we're going to pass over after this, so don't run too fast. Okay, all those in favor of Article 42, changing from planning to zoning, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? No. It requires 2/3. Where's my counters? Come on! Let's have one more time around. You made it this far, let's do it. It's a 2/3 vote. I'm not going to decide it. You're not going to walk out and everybody grumble later. All those in favor of changing from planning to zoning, raise your cards. Somebody make sure they get the moving party at the Levesque. You got him. One on my left. In the middle, 18. Mr. Levesque.
15.
1-5 on my right. If you are opposed to changing it from planning to zoning.
What is
21 on my left. Who? 6 in the middle. You can tell where people sit. Mr. Levesque?
12.
12. Requires a 2/3 to pass. Mrs. Herrick?
The article is defeated. The vote was 34 yes, 39 no.
Thank you. Mr. Toll, tell me we're going to pass over Article 43 and we can go home. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Move to adjourn. You don't need to move to adjourn. When the warrant is done, it's done. Thank you all very much.